Hey, listeners. My name is Elisha, the founder of the Witnesses podcast. It's so beautiful to have you listening to our podcast. And I want you to know something that means a whole lot to me. Thank you for tuning in. And one thing I love to tell all of our listeners is it's not just about you listening, but listening to understand. Understanding is the most important thing. So important. So, you have to listen, learn, and practice. Thank you so very much and happy listening.
Hi, Shannon. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
That's so good. Okay, oftentimes I love to talk about the essence of the show, which is to invite amazing guests, amazing guests like Shannon to come talk to us about their triumphant stories, because we believe that in our audience, there might be someone who is stuck up in the same situation Shannon came out of triumphantly. So by that person listening to you speak, he or she might actually pick an information from what you're going to be saying today, and that might as well lead to that person or people transformation. So this show is basically to cause transformation into our audience lives. You get it? So within the next few minutes, Shannon, let us get started with your story, the challenges that you faced, and how you overcame them. And afterwards, I've got some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Shannon, over to you.
Well, I don't think I had the worst experiences for sure. I had some wonderful experiences throughout my childhood, but also some of the challenges were that my brother and I had a lot of conflict. He was a year older than I, and my dad was really high stress. And so there was a lot of conflict in the house around that too. I think I learned early on to be sort of more of a placater and a peacekeeper. Um, and that sort of set me up for creating relationships in adolescence that were not very balanced or healthy. So I took on my high school boyfriend was very angry and moody and alcoholic. And I really got lost in that fog for a while. I wrote a book called Out of the Fog into the Clear, journaling to help you heal from toxic relationships. And that really describes the fear, obligation, and guilt that happen when you're lost in the fog of a toxic relationship. So as I figured out what was going on and how to sort of heal from it, then I wanted to share with others and try to help others and became a therapist. So that's kind of a lot of my story.
Okay, you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you now. What was the last part?
Okay.
I didn't hear the last part. Yeah, before.
Just those experiences, I think, drove me to want to be a therapist, to try to first figure out what happened in my life, and then secondly, to really help others, because I always felt like I was just making it up. I didn't have a therapist growing up. And I just felt very lost and alone in the midst of it all. So I always wanted to sort of make that different for other people. And in my early career, I worked a lot with young people. That was really important to me, especially the adolescents, that they wouldn't feel so alone.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so let us dive into the questions. Are you ready, Shanna?
Yep.
All right. So, how can one heal from toxic relationships? Got that?
Yeah, the really important things are that we recognize that we've probably created a toxic relationship within ourselves. So we talk to ourselves inside our own heads thousands of times a day. And if that's really toxic, then we're hurting our own feelings throughout every day. And so we have to fix that first. So in my book and in my work, I always start there. How do you talk to yourself inside your own head? And where did that voice come from? A lot of times people will say, well, that's just me. I'll say, well, wait a minute. Do you talk that way to your friends? Oh, no, I would never say those awful things to my friends. Well, then that's not your voice. That came from somewhere else. Came from a parent or a sibling or teacher in school. It can come from a lot of different places, but that's not your voice. And so you have to find your own voice and start to treat yourself better. Then you have to move on to having good boundaries with other people and showing up fully with other people so that you express your thoughts, feelings, wants, and needs and set boundaries when someone is treating you poorly, either walking away, hanging up the phone, telling them you're not going to be treated that way. Those are boundaries that we have to set. And that's how we sort of change that dynamic. And a lot of people will respect you if you set better boundaries. And then if they don't, if they escalate, then that relationship is not for you.
That's wisdom. I love that. Okay, the second question. It says, why are there so many people struggling with toxic relationships? Like the reason.
It's a really good question. And it's really, I think, complicated. But I do think our societies are becoming more and more selfish and less giving, and sort of getting validation for being more and more self-obsessed and selfish. And so it isn't that we want to be so giving that we're a doormat or that we're, not standing up for ourselves. But I think when people are so self-obsessed and so superficial, it really lends itself to not being very empathic or compassionate or caring or giving. And then that's the essence of a toxic relationship, is if their thoughts, feelings, wants, and needs matter and yours don't. So you always want to take a look and step back if that's the case. But I think our culture is becoming more superficial and more self-obsessed. And that lends itself to a lot of this toxic behavior in relationships.
I got that. Okay, the third one. This says, what can someone do to get free from an abusive partner, parent, adult child, sibling, or work colleague?
So I think, like I was saying first, we have to look at how we're talking to ourselves. I mean, if there's violence, you have to just get away and stay away right away. But a lot of abuse is very mental and emotional and manipulative. A lot of it. A lot of it is more manipulative. So once you start treating yourself better and then you start setting boundaries with somebody and then seeing what happens. So if they respect your boundaries, great, move forward, but make sure that you're not in that placating role anymore, that you're not doing those old things that accept the bad behavior from your partner or your child or your work colleague. So standing up for yourself. And you don't have to be loud and obnoxious and abusive about it from yourself. You can stand your ground and learn to be assertive. And that's a challenge at first, and people are often really scared to do that. And they think that things are going to get worse, but they actually get better. And then if it gets worse, then you really have to do whatever it takes. And a lot of times, again, people feel like, well, I would never call the police, or I would never tell anybody, or I would never ask for help. But we have to break those old rules and recognize that they are deciding to do those things that create the police action, not you. So you have to do what you need to do to get yourself and keep yourself safe. And then also you have to recognize that emotionally, you're so tied to that person that when you get free, you might actually feel worse. You might feel more scared to be alone than you felt to be with them, which is so irrational, right? But emotionally, you're attached to them, and your rational mind's kind of offline. So you've got to learn to calm down that emotional reaction and use your rational mind to make a good decision, stick to that good decision, and work through the emotions. And that's really crucial, because a lot of people end up going back and back and back. And then everybody in their lives says, well, they're stupid because they keep going back. But that's not stupid. It's the way your brain has gotten attached to that person and the way you've blamed yourself for everything that's wrong and the way your emotions are overriding your rational mind. So you've got to flip that script, use your rational mind to make good decisions, and then stick with it through the process.
Wow. You're such a brilliant woman, Shannon.
No,
Really?
not at all. Not at
Wow,
all.
I love that. All right. Okay, so let us talk about stress for a bit. Um, what are some strategies that we can use to deal better with stress?
So important because stress is a reality for all of us, and we have to learn to take care of ourselves better. And so, for each person, that's going to be different. Some people need to push themselves out of the house and be more social and be more active physically and be more involved in something that's mentally challenging. For some people, they need to chill. So it's
Yeah,
very different. Like self care for each person is totally unique. You know, if you've got somebody who's super high powered, they work all the time, they're just constantly do, they need to learn how to relax. But there are also people who crawl in under the covers and don't go anywhere and don't do anything. Those people need to drag themselves out of bed and
yeah,
get going for for their self care. So it's not a one size fits all. You know, some people may need a jammy day, and some people may need a hot bath and candles and read a good book, and other people that would be the worst thing because they're already isolating and they're already doing all that self-indulgence stuff, and they need to get out and get busy and get active. So you have to look at what is sort of unbalanced in your own life, and you need to find better balance with physical activity, making sure you're sleeping well, eating well. And then when you get all those things sort of straightened out, then stress comes along and you have more resiliency. And then the next piece is to learn how to think things through differently. Because when stress happens, the how we talk to ourselves about that is very critical. Because if I take something stressful and then I add to it and add to it, then I'll get myself really freaked out by it. So for instance, my boss at work adds a bunch of work to me. I can go, oh, that jerk, he's always doing that to me. And oh, my life sucks and everybody's against me and everybody's down on me and all this nasty, like you can really get yourself wound up about that. Or you can say, all right, I'm going to buckle down, do the best I can. If there's stuff I can't get done, I'm going to go back and talk to him about it. So there are ways of coping that are really about how you're talking to yourself again inside your own head that can either rile you up or calm you down. And we're responsible for that. I'm not responsible for the stress that comes at me, but I'm 100% responsible for how I respond to that stress.
that's so correct. That's so true. Okay, so the second to the last question. Hmm, what strategies do you recommend for someone with depression or anxiety?
Well, I would love it if everybody in the world could have access to a therapist, but I know that's just not possible. So I think some of the strategies for dealing with depression and anxiety are things that I've talked about, like how do you talk to yourself inside your own head? And when we create anxiety, or I should say, when we ruminate on things, when we tell ourselves self-judgmental statements, when we sort of escalate and catastrophize. Catastrophic thinking is one of those cognitive things that we do that escalates our anxiety or depression. When we do poor self-care, like oftentimes I see depressed people crawl under the covers and don't go anywhere, don't do anything, and isolate. Well, somebody doing all those things is not going to feel better, guaranteed. And I've often talked with clients who say, "Yeah, I just stay in bed all day and watch TV." And I'm like, if I did that, I would feel depressed too. So you have to take care of yourself. And a lot of times it's grabbing yourself by the scruff of the neck and dragging yourself out to do the things you know are going to be healthy and that will help you through that depression. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, it's not what you want to do, but it's pushing yourself to do the things you know you need to do in order to get well.
Beautiful. Thank you for that beautiful response. I love that. Okay, so in conclusion, Shannon, let's say there is a piece of advice you'd like to give to the audience. What would that be? And let's say there is someone listening or people listening who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you do. How can that be possible?
So I have a lot of ways of reaching out to me. I have a YouTube channel called Therapist Talks, Thrive Beyond Narcissism. And that's, just a couple hundred different videos on all kinds of different relationships that are toxic and how to get well. I like to focus on strategies for thriving. I also have a website and a book. So nofoggydays.com has the website and link to my book. And I also have a master class and a coaching program that's healfromtoxicrelationships.com. So there's a few different ways, but I think the most important advice I would give you is that if you had difficulties in childhood and then you brought a lot of those stories forward, to really take care of yourself and heal yourself and become more self-compassionate so that the way you talk to yourself is the way you talk to other people, and that you bring that self-compassion forward and change those old stories, and that you self-coach, because most of us don't have, or most people don't have access to a therapist or a coach, so that you self-coach in the way that you do your friends or your kids or your colleagues, and use those positive strategies to calm yourself down if you're feeling anxious, to get yourself going if you're feeling depressed, and to really take care of yourself in a different, healthier way.
Beautiful. Nah, I really love this moment, I tell you. Oh my goodness. Shannon, I'm so sure that the listeners will love me to invite you on the show again. Would that be possible?
Sure, you betcha, anytime. Thank you so much for
Brilliant.
having me.
Okay, so that's going to be the end of the show, Shannon. Thank you for coming. Thank you for honoring the invite. It really means a whole lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. You take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this incredible episode. Your support means the world to us, and we truly value you. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback is greatly appreciated.